Hello all and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. In the last video, we headed to the moon, and in this one, we will be heading to its younger brother Minmus, which is further away, a little bit more difficult to get to, but easier to take off. So, we may as well hop right into it, shall we? So for this mission, we will be using the one that can carry 3 Kerbals, because last time we only had 1, so we're upgrading. We're going to start out with our parachute, and then we'll get our thermals, we'll get our heat shield going, then make sure to couple it, and then what we will do now is get our fuel tanks. We'll grab this one, and then a smaller one, and we'll just make let's make them grey. So yeah, as you can see there, we're moving on. Now, we're going to move on to our drogue parachutes. If you remember from the last video, the drogue parachutes are the ones that deploy higher up in the atmosphere to help us slow down. So as you can see here, we got our landing legs. It is ideal to have 3 for when you're landing on uneven surfaces. Now, moving on, we will get this little poodle engine. It has 4 little engines, so it's good, nice and efficient. What we will be doing now is we will be moving on to the coupling. As you can see right there, we got it there, and now moving on, we'll get a slightly bigger fuel tank. So we'll get that one, and we'll make it orange and grey. That's a nice color. Now, what we will do is we will put our fuel tanks on. That one there's too big, that one. And then we will move on to this engine here, which is the Mammoth engine. It has 4 engines that make 1000 Newton meters of thrust, or whatever you want to call it. Moving on, we will use these little ailerons here, put them down low so it's nice and easy to steer, and then we will be adding these RCS thrusters. The RCS thrusters will help us make those little adjustments for when we are escaping out of the atmosphere. Alright, moving on, we will now do our science stuff. So we have our gravity detector, we'll put that on. Then we have our thermometer. The next things we will add is the mystery goo. And then we will also add our barometer. That one right there, which is basically useless. And then we will add the seismic accelerometer. The last 2 steps for us now is to add our stability enhancers. And then once we have added these, we need to check our delta V. Suggest having around 7,000 meters of delta V just to play it safe. Now, we will move on to our staging. As you can see, it should look somewhat as to what mine looks like. Now, the last and final step, it's time to name it. So our first ship was called Vanguard I, so now this one will be called Vanguard II, Vanguard 2. Right, let's launch. Here we are on the launch pad. Now, remember, turn SAS on, turn RCS on. Now, let's launch. Now, if you feel like you might be accelerating too quick, put it to about half throttle in the thicker atmosphere, just so you're not burning as much fuel, because we do not need to accelerate all that much at the moment, we just need to keep going up. Now, if you remember in the last video, all you have to do is tap D, slowly increase your angle, and around 10,000 meters, you want to be around that 45-degree mark on your nav ball. So, now, what you want to do is go down to your maneuver node, the little purple one in the bottom left, and click that, and you can see your apoapsis and periapsis without having to press M and go into your map. So as you can see here, we have increased the throttle a little bit just because we're higher up in the atmosphere. We're no longer at about halfway. Once you see the fire effects start to come onto your ship like this, it's wise to decrease throttle a bit, because at the moment, with how fast we are going, there is a lot of drag. So kind of just cruise and accelerate slowly. Now that you've reached around 40,000 meters in altitude, you can increase throttle again once more. So, As you can see, we have hit 100,000 meters on our apoapsis, which is a pretty good orbit. Now, what you're going to do is we are now going to do our maneuver node. So you want to zoom in a little bit right there on the apoapsis, add a maneuver node, and then what you want to do is you want to copy me. What you can see I'm doing here is with that little yellow thing, making it go forwards until you see the orbital line flip, just like that. Now, we can set our maneuver node and let our ship travel to where it needs to be pointing at. Once you have sped up time a little bit, what you're going to want to do next is slowly press shift forwards, just like that, and then let our ship do its burn. So we get into a nice stable orbit around Kerbin. Now what you will want to do next is go into your map, zoom out and find Minmus, set it as a target, and then that little green arrow right there, you're going to want to set a maneuver node right on it, just like that, add maneuver, and then the little pink one, the normal and anti-normal. What you will want to do next is slowly adjust it so you can see our angle actually changing a little bit. So you can see that it's changing there. It'll flip right when you want to get it to where it needs to be. And then we will have to slow down a little bit as well. So you want to go retrograde, make sure the orbit one flips as well, and make sure everything lines up relatively well. Make sure your ship is pointing towards its maneuver node before you get to the maneuver, as this is the mistake that I made. The next step for us is to move on with our burn. So press shift, not Z, just so you don't lose control, because Z is like one big oomph of power, whereas shift, it's more gradual. So once you've done that, we will then move on to our maneuver node to actually transferring onto Minmus. So here you can see on your screen that there's a little image that I'm showing you guys. So the green arrow is basically where you'll want to aim, and then Minmus is where it will be. So I will show you here in just a second. So you aim there, and then prograde, you want to drag that forwards, and then ta-da, you have a transfer point or an interception. Now what you're going to want to do is set your ship so it points towards the maneuver node, and then just time warp. And congratulations, you are now on your way to Minmus. So the next step for us is we just wanted to get an intercept, but now what we want to do is get a precise intercept where we'll be in a pretty good orbit. So you want to set a maneuver node about halfway to Minmus, and then play around with your orbit until you probably reach around 20,000 meters. What I do suggest next for you guys is to right click on your engine and set your thrust limiter to around 2 to 3%. Once you have done that, you can then much easily get a much more precise orbit around Minmus. Now all we have to do is make our way towards our maneuver node. Now as you could see, I actually went over it a little bit, but honestly it doesn't matter all that much. It was only a second or so all we have to do is press shift just a little bit so we can get as close to our maneuver as possible. Now the next step for us is to actually move on to our maneuver node to get into an orbit around Minmus instead of just shooting past it. So as you can see there, add maneuver, and we're going to want to go retrograde, the one with the little cross in it. Make sure that it flips, the little yellow dots flip just like that, and then once you have done that, set your ship so that it is pointing towards the maneuver, and all we have to do is time warp. Now, one thing I suggest, remember to right click your engine and set your thrust limiter back to 100%, because I forgot to do that. So yeah, as you can see, I am right clicking it, and yeah, it's at 100%. I burnt already a little bit at like 3%, and it did barely anything, so it doesn't really matter. But now we can move on with our burn, slow down a little bit, and then put ourselves in a nice stable orbit around Minmus. The next step for you lovely people is to set a maneuver node, retrograde, to try and find somewhere relatively flat to land on Minmus. So landing on Minmus isn't all that difficult because you're not going 500 meters a second like you are with the moon. All we need to do now is to speed up time a little bit and do our burn. So as you can see, it was only 17 meters per second, but now, as you can see in the top, we have our sea level altitude and our actual altitude. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is just time warp a little bit. Remember to deploy your landing legs. Set your ship so it is facing retrograde. And if you feel like you might mess up, you can press F5 to save your game. Now, what you can do instead of burning it all at once is you can burn bits at a time. So you can turn the throttle on and off at different altitudes. As you can see, that is what I am doing right now. So as we slowly get closer to the surface, I am about to turn on my boosters again, right there. And then turn them off. We will turn them back on very shortly. And then what you can do is you can press radial out, so your ship is pointing directly up. So you can see there, we are just barely playing with shift and control to go to a very slow descent. And ta-da, just like that, we have a nice soft touchdown. So now what we can do is, you remember those science equipment we placed earlier? We can give those a read and get some science points if you're playing on science mode. So as you can see here, we have our thermometer. It collects and recorded temperature data. We have our seismic accelerometer. Faint seismic waves are detected. Now what we can also do is we can observe our mystery goo. That's all it says, is we have observed the goo. Pretty cool, I guess. Now we can move on to the gravioli detector. That is what it's called. We can observe the gravity on Minmus. And then we can also read the pressure. Obviously there's no atmosphere, so there's no point of that one. Now what we can do is we can get Bob out. Bob is our scientist, so he will know more about Minmus than the others. So we can press space to let go, and then press R to enable RCS. Once you have got him flying around, we will be able to deploy our science stuff. Ignore the hole in the ground. So all you'll have to do is right click on him. You feel a bit like a superhero when you jump in the low gravity. Take surface sample. You sneak a taste of the surface sample. Nope, it definitely is not made of some delicious dessert. Ah yes, just like the moon is made out of cheese. We can also plant our flag, and what we will say is this is the first ever Minmus landing. Now, if you want, take the chance to explore, use your little jetpack and roam around Minmus for a little bit, but we will be heading back into an orbit. So now, because Minmus's gravity is so low, all you'll want to do is press Z for about 3 seconds, press M to go into your map, and then speed up a little bit till you reach about 5,000 meters. Rotate your ship so it is facing towards the 90-degree angle. Bring it closer towards that 90-degree angle. Now, what you're going to want to do is just press M, go into your map, and just press Z. Let it slowly increase to about 15,000 meters. Stop, and then we will just set it like a normal orbit. Alright, once you have done that, make sure to set your ship so it is pointing towards the maneuver. Retract your landing gear, speed up time, and make your way towards your maneuver node. Now all you have to do is just do your burn like normal. I'm pretty sure you'd know how to do it by now if you got this far, so yeah. Alright, well done. You are in another orbit in Minmus. One of the last and final steps for you lovely people is we are going to set a maneuver node to escape the influence of Minmus. Then you're going to want to rotate this one right here, and then you're going to want to use your prograde to get to around 30 to 50,000 meters of an orbit around Kerbin. That is an ideal point where you won't burn to a crisp, and you'll actually slow down enough to land gently. Now we can actually move on to the burn. So for some reason, as you can see there, my ship is wiggling a bit, so it changed my orbit around Kerbin, but it was easily fixed just by burning a bit of more extra fuel. Now, you need to make sure that you're facing retrograde so you can actually slow down and not burn to a crisp when you enter the planet. So, you can see there, we have decoupled. We are now officially in the atmosphere because we are lower than 70,000 meters. Now, it is time for us to deploy our drogue parachutes. These are the ones that deploy high in the atmosphere, and then around 3,000 meters, I will deploy the main big parachutes. Alright, well if you guys enjoyed this video, if I helped you land on Minmus, please consider liking and subscribing. Helps me grow, keeps me motivated, and you'll hear more of my voice. So, I will see you guys on a later day.